Hi, this is Matthew and welcome. I'm starting a cult series today, a series of videos and maybe some documentation, some other, maybe some posts in written form about cults, because cults are a big part of the world. They're a big part of life. They're a huge impact. If once we have an insight on cults, then we can understand how the primitive mind works, and then we can understand why we have 14,000 children dying a day. So in the end, the goal is all about helping the world become a safer place, a better place, a place where we're more loving, we're more compassionate, and we're caring about these children and this number of children dying every day, going down instead of staying the same, or going down very slowly because of economic reasons, because of political reasons. We need to really base our culture on compassion. And when we base our culture on compassion, then we're going to be saving these children. And that's the key. Religion is not going to do it. Politics is not going to do it. Force is not going to do it. Wars never does it. Wars just makes it worse. And people think, oh, we have to go in, and no, you don't. And you're not. If you want to go in and save somebody, you'll be, instead of building nuclear submarines and cruising around North Korea, you'll be offering help so they can feed their people. And yeah, these guys, sometimes these bad guys will build palaces and things like that out of gold instead of feeding the people. But I don't think that was really happening in Iraq before a million kids died based upon the US invasion. So let me get right to the point. So let's talk about cults, okay? So this is the introduction to the cult series, and I'm going to be talking about, some of my experience in different cults, my personal definition of cults, and some ideas about how cults can be destructive and how they're so misunderstood. By the way, cults are not only religious. You can be involved in any kind of a cult. But let's look at the dictionary here. American Heritage Dictionary. A religion or religious sect generally considered to be extremist or false, with its followers often living in unconventional manner, while the guidance of authoritarian, while under the guidance of a charismatic or authoritarian leader. So David Koresh, right, was that in Waco, and the police broke in and they harassed him and hassled him, and anybody could see, like I did at the time, it was pretty obvious that things were not going to end well for those people. And yeah, it was a cult, and it was pretty extreme, and I think he was having babies with several of the followers, and some things that are kind of taboo, whether they're really should be picked on validly or not. The bottom line is that those guys were kind of going off the deep end. They were getting kind of extreme. The government worried about their guns, although they weren't shooting anybody, they weren't hurting anybody, and everybody ended up getting killed in a fire. And so I think the government went pretty extreme. But Koresh, that was an example of a cult, a religious cult. Let's go on here. The followers of such a religion or sect, so we could say cult followers, huh? A system or community of religious worship and ritual. Okay, so I had a friend of mine say, one of the religions that I was involved in was the one that I had no personal choice about, and that was Catholicism. And when I was born Catholic, and I was taken to church. And then when I got older, I got more into it, and I wanted to become a priest. So I spent a very short time at a seminary in Wisconsin, and it didn't appeal to me. It just seemed something was wrong, but I didn't know. As a kid, we really don't know how to express ourselves clearly. And even me at my age of 62, there are times when I really don't know how to express myself. I have a feeling, I have an idea, but when you're younger, wow, it's really tough. Okay, so being raised Catholic, a friend of mine said that's the biggest cult in the world. Well, how do we define a cult? Well, they do have the Vatican. They do have the Pope that wears a funny hat, dresses kind of in a weird way. sometimes we got to watch out for the long beards and the funny hats and the strange outfits, because that's how we identify ourselves and communicate ourselves to be a kind of a wizard. I'm special. Gandalf or whatever these guys are in these movies, they have the funny hat and they've got the robes and they've got the long beards, and sometimes that could be a very scary thing too. But a lot of times it's an indication that this person wants to be a cult leader, or maybe they're a cult follower. Not always, but sometimes. Okay, my definition of a cult is anything that messes up your thinking, messes up your objective thinking. So you could be in a politics cult. I mean, there are people that are convinced that all the Democrats are total idiots and all the Republicans are great. We're not perfect, but the Democrats are totally psycho. They're idiots, or vice versa. So a political party can prevent you because it's so tribal. You think that all these guys are bad and stupid and wrong, and we're the best and we're the ones to follow. And there's a limited group of beliefs that go along with either democracy or Republicans. Do you want to put yourself in that box? Well, if you do, and if you're adamant about that, and if you're a believer in your political party, whatever it is, what you're doing is you're taking your ability to think freely and you're handing it over to a group. Had a friend of mine describe atheists as like herding cats. Did you ever try to herd cats? Well, you can't do it because they all want to go off on their own directions. They don't really obey at all. Did you ever teach a cat to fetch? It's impossible, right? Cats don't fetch in general. It's their nature. So the nature of a lot of atheists are, look, I don't believe in God. I don't believe in your God. I don't believe this. I don't believe that. They're skeptical people. So you can't herd them. How are they skeptical? Well, they're thinking for themselves. Now, there are a group of people that are kind of extremists, just negative about everything. And they hate religion and but that's such a small percentage. Most people that don't belong to a cult, in other words, they don't sign over their brain to some religious order. Independent thinking, that's a good thing. We don't want to put that down, but it hurts a lot of people's feelings. Why? Because you assign your life to some religious doctrine, or to the Chicago Cubs, or to a certain soccer team. You know, people have been killed over soccer. There are riots over soccer. Do you think these people are thinking for themselves, like, oh, what's best for me? What's best for my family? What's best for those? No, it gets crazy and they turn into these mobs. So this mob behavior also will come from cult think, and that is not thinking independently. So many protests and so many riots and people going breaking into stores and stealing 10 pairs of Nikes that don't even fit their feet. But they're angry and they're going against the establishment because why? They don't really understand. They stopped understanding and they just hate these guys. They hate this group of people. That's what prejudice is all about. That's what happened in the South, and it's still very common in a lot of parts of America, other parts of the world. People were against Black people as a whole culture. They thought, oh, the Black people are inferior, or they're dangerous, or they smoke the demon weed, or all these kinds of things. That's a kind of a cult think. Why? Because they're not thinking for themselves. They're not saying, oh, they never know a Black person probably, so they should actually investigate for themselves. Meet a Black person, make friends with a person like that. See, is it really true that these guys are whatever they're being accused of? No, they didn't do that. There's this cult think. So you get a whole group of people that are, KKK is a good example of that. And if you're raised in this kind of prejudice where you think Jews are bad, or you think all Black people are bad, or all non-whites are bad, if you're raised in that, or you fall into that because of the weakness in your mind, you're in a cult. Okay, so cult think has a incredibly wide spectrum. It's not just about David Koresh. It's not just about people barbecuing babies in the woods. Cult think is a weakness of the mind, your inability to think for yourself. You're handing over your sense of logic to the group. So if you say, hey, I'm a Democrat, you're going to vote for the Democrat, aren't you? You're going to, when it comes to presidential elections or any other kind of election where it's about these political parties, you're going to vote your party. Vote your party. and vote. I don't vote, and I'm damn proud of it because I don't want to be part of that prejudicial system, that cult system, that division. Why do we have to have two different parties, political parties? One thing is when you play baseball, okay, that's fun. When I grew up, I was on the north side of Chicago, and my dad liked the Cubs, and we liked the Cubs because my dad liked the Cubs because that's where we lived. We lived in, what do they call it? Cub country or something like that. So, but if it gets extreme, if it gets so that you're arguing with people, if it gets so that you're spending all your time memorizing the RBIs and the all of the statistics, which I know a lot of people that do that. They memorize all the statistics about sports, but they don't know how many children are dying every day. They don't know where the world crises are. They don't do anything when there's a huge earthquake and people are homeless. People are living on the streets. They don't know about what's happening in Yemen and why. They don't know what's happened in Syria and why. And they support their government. So you'll see a lot of cult think in America. This is going to be a long video. I'm sorry about that. Just a lot of things around this idea of cults. Subsequent videos will be shorter, but I want to introduce some of these very basic concepts. When you look at people supporting the military, which the government has to have the military to enforce their dominance, to enforce their power. It's all about power. That's all politics is about. It's about power, getting as much possible power as you can. A lot of people do that through money. So the whole Silicon Valley thing, the Silicon Valley is about getting more money in general. Venture capital, I've been dealing with a lot of venture capitalists lately because I have a project that's a humanitarian project, a community project that I want to do. One of them is in Bangalore. Another one is in Uganda. There are a couple in Uganda that I'm going to be doing this year. Dealing with venture capitalists, they don't care about children dying. These guys have millions and millions of dollars. They raise millions and millions of dollars. It's got nothing to do with helping people that are in the most extreme poverty situation. I get no response. I think they probably think I'm a nutcase. They probably think I'm a crazy idealist. They probably think I'm just a soft-hearted idiot, which is what a lot of my friends I used to live in China. A lot of my friends in China kind of felt like that. They'd give me advice. They say, don't help this, don't do that, don't get involved in that, because that's how their culture works. And the culture amongst the people that are money-centered, not compassion-centered, money-centered, is that they're gonna think about gaining more money. They have more money, they have power, they can buy more than one house, they can have a lot of people working for them, excuse me, tell them what to do, they can take trips, they can buy a boat, Mercedes, Porsche, whatever cars they want to have. These people, when it comes to becoming a movie star, the goal is, a lot of times, just to buy a big house. They'll have a house with 32 bedrooms, but it's like one person. Look at these people that become super rich. They got that way by focusing on money cult. So it becomes about the money. So the common denominator here is when we hand over our thinking, our motivation, our actions, our intentions, our ideology is about money or some god or some sports team or some political ideology. These ideologies rip us apart. They rip the world apart. They rip apart humanity. They rip apart community. So many people, they don't care about making the world a better place. As long as they're okay, they don't care about that. So my idea, once again, about a cult, it's something that takes over your mind, something you sign your life over to. I signed a billion-year contract with Scientology. I quit because I realized that it was stupid, and it's not huge anymore. It was a cult. And I realized that because I realized that they turned their minds over to the religion, actually the business of Scientology. But they weren't doing things that were compassionate, not to each other, not to themselves. So many of the people that I knew were cigarette addicts, and they were coffee addicts, and they were only working to make Scientology more powerful and the dogma behind Scientology. But it wasn't about feeding the hungry. It wasn't about making a better world. It wasn't about that. They talk about that a lot. A lot of religions talk about that a lot. I've had so many people that are religious people that have gotten angry at me and said, wait a second, my church, blah, 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 blah. But 95% of the money that you give to your church goes towards paying the staff. It goes towards building more churches. It goes towards traveling around the world on a mission where you're trying to brainwash other people. My own sister went to the Philippines. Why? These people had quit Islam and they were becoming Christians. My sisters, one of my sisters, well, all three of them are Christians. And so it was not about empowering them so they could think for themselves. It was about sharing doctrine with them, sharing dogma with them, and helping their minds to be controlled by the dogma of the evangelical cult. This is a huge thing, my friends. This is a really huge thing in the world. Why? Because if we want to have a compassionate world, if we want to have a world where we're taking care of each other, where we're accepting each other, we can't do that if we're tribal, if we're involved in cults, if our minds are controlled by some ideology that separates us. And religions do that. Cults do that. So I want to share something that I was thinking about earlier about what cults are. Let's see. A lot of things that people that are religious don't really know. And I didn't know when I was part of religion. One thing that helped me quit religion was having miracles happen in my life from 3 different religions. So I couldn't assign what happened. This is a huge deception. When you're part of a religion, when you sign your life over to some kind of a religion or some kind of a force, like if somebody says, hey, for example, with sports, oh, that Cub pitcher, he sucks. Some people might get upset about that because that's their man, that's their boy, that's who they are hoping is going to help them go to the pennant or something like that. So when you sign yourself over, there's a pride thing. We don't want to be wrong. But for me, I think one of my problems, the way I grew up, was I was always accused of being wrong. My self-determinism, my ability to stand up for myself was always being attacked by a psychopath brother. And he was really struggling. And he took me on because I was the only younger brother, and I got all the support of my family to kind of put me down. So I didn't really think much of myself and my own ideas. And that gave me a lot of ability to be flexible and not be proud about what I believed, and always have the open-mindedness, which I have now. Hey, if I'm wrong, let me know. I'm happy to be wrong, because then I'm going to learn the correct way. I'm going to learn the truth. But one thing that most people that have some kind of false confidence, some kinds of, a lot of evangelicals that I met in Chicago when I was visiting my sister a few years ago, these people believed in absolute truth. I worked for an Israeli Jew in Bangkok, and he talked about the truth. There's the truth. You start talking that way, we know you're brainwashed. We know your mind is no longer open. What brainwashing does, what ideologies like that do, they close our brain off to learning. So we can't learn when we're wrong. We'll never find out that we're wrong. We just stick to that ideology, and we only hang out with people that are in that same tribe. But what happened to me was, I'm an independent thinker. I've always been an independent thinker. I've always looked at systems. School I thought was ridiculous, and I wasn't able at kindergarten or in grammar school to be able to say, this is indoctrination. This is control. This isn't about empowering me. This isn't about learning. And I really, when I got older, I've been able to understand exactly, why did I reject that? Why did I reject the education system? And why do I still see it as such a joke, such a ridiculous indoctrination system? Because now I'm older and I know how to express myself, and I have the experience looking at different systems and different institutions, and have the ability to be able to see the difference and see what's going on, and see how people who are patriotic will support the US military to go in and kill a bunch of innocent people based upon the agenda. They don't even know what it is, but they're told a bunch of lies and they believe the lies. And they say, oh, we support our soldiers. Thank you for your service. Thank you for going and killing women and children in another country, including men too, that are saying, hey, what the hell are you doing here? Get out of my country. Thank you for doing that. Because you're following the agenda and you're not questioning and you're not thinking for yourself. I don't think there's a more dangerous cult than the US military in the world. Something like 900 bases around the world. They want to control everybody, everything. I'm not for what China's doing in the South China Sea, where they're expanding their military base, but I think it's mostly defensive. I don't think they would normally do that, but because the US military is all over the place, they're completely surrounding Iran, for example. They're completely surrounding everybody in every country around the world. And they're developing some of the most lethal weapons that exist. Now other countries are doing that to compete. So we've got these psychopaths that are wanting to defend themselves, but really they are the aggressors. They are the murderers. They are the killers. They are the ones that go and hurt other people instead of, look, it looks like you guys got a famine, we can ship in tons and tons of grain to help feed you or whatever is going to help that problem. So anyway, I'm going to do a series on cults. This is the first one. And I just want to share my thoughts, my experience, because I have a lot of experience in cult think, and I've studied that a lot. And one of the reasons why I've studied that, two reasons. One is when I was a very young kid, like 4 or 5 years old, I had a dream that came from who knows where, compulsion or something about my family dynamics, where I want to do good in the world. I want to do something really good in the world. There's this whole world, and I want to be a guy who does something really good that really contributes. Probably looking for love from my mother, looking for acceptance, looking for admiration from my mother. And my mother, I'd staple something together and paint it, and I'd show it to her, and she's like, "Oh, you're so clever. That's so great." And I love that praise. So that's probably what got me trying to be a good guy in the world, do good things. Is some psychological thing, some need in my heart for that love and attention. I'm not the only one, I know, but I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think if I can hear from people saying, look, you helped me, I think we all want that feeling. We want to know that we're helping, that we're contributing, that we're bringing value to others. I think we all feel that way. So I had that pretty strong when I was very young, and it still continued till today. The other thing is, I look at the biggest problem in the world. To me, the biggest problem that resonates mostly with me is 14,000 children dying every day through our neglect. We're neglecting them. That's why they're dying. If we weren't neglecting them, if we weren't buying Gucci bags or Mercedes, or if we weren't making more bombs and invading more countries, we have all these resources to save all these kids, but people don't care about it enough to do something about it. It's like people are zombies. It blows my mind. Most people are zombies about this. And there are a lot of people out there that are doing deceptive things. We're helping the children, but they're not. They're taking a huge salary and they're not really doing anything to empower the kids. Pulling up in a truck and throwing bags of rice off the back of the truck is not a sustainable thing. It doesn't empower people. It may save some lives though, so it's got a good side, but let's stop putting out fires. Let's stop just doing band-aids. Let's really empower other people, and that takes some thought, that takes some planning, it takes some understanding, it takes some study, and it takes some real strategy. And I think I've got some ideas about that. So cults get in the way. Whether it's your sports team, whether it's your military industrial complex, whether it's your religion, whether it's your political beliefs, these things get in the way because they drain people of their energy, they distract people, they confuse people, and people forget about what's the most important thing in the world. Is it the Cubs winning the pennant, or is it stopping those children from dying by giving them some attention and taking care of them? I don't know. Ask the people on the north side of Chicago, where's your money? Where's your attention? Where's your time going? when the Cubs are on TV. Thanks for watching. My name is Matthew. I run a little thing called Everybody Community. We've got a project, 5steps.org. I'll share that in the comments. Gives you a little information about what some of the things I'm working on. Cults. This is the Cult Series #1. Thanks for watching. See you next time.